staff, residents. Oh, is it on? Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I see we have quorum. I call this regular council meeting for Wednesday, June 7th into session. And as is our usual practice, we will now have the land recognition statement. This week it will be read by Councillor Eckert. Councillor?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Councillor. I now turn to the clerk for approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Eckhart, that the agenda be amended to move item 10.2.6 until after our closed session, as we do have a matter dealing with that under the closed session itself.
Thank you. Call for debate on that motion?
You can.
Yeah. Any comments on this motion? Not seeing any. We turn to the clerk.
Proceeding with the vote, Councillor Eckhart?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kerr?
Yes.
Councillor Niznik?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
So that motion's carried. Thank you.
After reviewing the agenda, is there any councillor that has a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we do have a motion now to adopt the agenda as amended, and that was moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. So again, just a technicality if we want to adopt that.
Okay. Any discussion on this motion? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Commencing with the vote, Councillor Eckhart again.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion's carried. So we're now moving to item number 5 on our agenda, which is hearing of delegations. We have a delegation today from the Niagara chapter of Trouts Unlimited. I believe we have Dennis Edel here
Yes.
to speak to us.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good morning, Dennis. And you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for giving us the time to talk to you today and give you an update on the stormwater management pond outlet erosion issue. So I'll try to keep this within 5 minutes and leave some time for questions. So Niagara chapter, for the new councillors who we haven't seen before or presented to before, the Niagara chapter of Trout Unlimited Canada is a charitable organization with volunteers, fully volunteers, who care about the last remaining cold water aquatic system in Niagara, the upper 12 Mile Creek watershed. Oops, let's see. Sarah. Oh, there we go. Okay. We are a preeminent environmental organization. We're quite busy. We do a lot of work within the watershed, and we've won awards for the work that we've done. We also do a lot of community outreach. One of the things that we do is every year, for the last 7 years, we brought veterans down, ill or injured Canadian Forces soldiers. We teach them to fly fish as therapy. We're also focused on the upper 12 Mile Creek, which is Niagara's most significant watershed. It's also home to a dwindling population of brook trout. And brook trout, we say brook trout because they are a sentinel species. When you see brook trout, you have a clear, cold water, you have a healthy watershed. So their presence really is an indicator of the health of the watershed. What we're talking about here is the outlet of the stormwater management pond that flows under Highway 12 or Highway 20, excuse me, and kind of the tributary comes between. On the left is the Fonthill Lions Club, and on the right is Pelham Cares. And the tributary then connects into the watershed at approximately near the Thurl border, where you can see in sort of letter E there. So it's an important tributary that connects into the watershed so it doesn't sit by itself. So what you can see is what's happening right now. There's too much water. There's too much velocity of the water coming through. It's scouring. It's creating erosion. It's taking off part of the property at Pelham Cares. The deck is threatening to fall in. And it's sending about 110,000 kilos worth of sediment into the watershed each year, and that is damaging the aquatic habitat. So it needs to be fixed. It continues to get worse each year, and this picture was just taken last week. So as a first step towards a solution for this, the town did approve funding last year of $70,000 for the design engineering of a solution. We volunteered to manage this process. We do not get compensated for that. Everything that we do is volunteer. We formed a working group, which included the town of Pelham, the city of Thurl, the NPCA, and the property owners for both the Lions Club and Pelham Cares. We hired Water's Edge, which is a very reputable firm that does these kind of solutions, and they were hired for the design engineering stage at the approved budget of $70,000. They came up with the final design, which was approved by the working group. It's hard to see here, but what it is a series of riffles and step pools that takes the energy out of the water and then dissipates it onto the floodplain. This design has been vetted by the working group. It has approval by DFO and NPCA, and pretty much ready to go. Part of that process, though, is a stage 1 archaeology study, which was included in the $70,000 quote for design engineering. However, there's a new requirement that came up this year to have First Nations observers on the site. This is part of the reconciliation agreement, federal reconciliation agreement. And so we incurred an unexpected cost of $7,300 for these observers on the site. Now, as I said, we didn't expect any fines on the site because the history shows that there was no settlements there, no First Nations activity, but unfortunately, we found one flake. And I don't think you can see it there, but it's one flake just behind Pelham Cares, which means that we have to go back and do a second investigation. Now, we are very positive that the second investigation will clear the site. We've spoken to the archaeology consultant, and since they're working in 5-meter grids, the chances of finding something else are very slim. But we still have to go back and make sure that there's nothing else there. And that is going to cost an extra $19,400. We include the observers from the first stage and the second stage. And there's some additional costs of the permitting costs. So right now, we're at a stage where we have an approved design. We've got one little hiccup with a flake next to Pelham Cares there, which we have to clarify. So we need an additional $20,440 to finish the design stage, and then we will have an approved design to fix this issue with the stormwater outlet. And just to show you a quick snapshot, the project by itself, and you're going to see a project supervision for TUC, that's our hours, that's in kind. That does not count as a cost of the actual project. But the project, if we added everything in together, be about a $400,000 project. We are pretty close to it. We think we're about $136,000. We are away from having all the money we need to get this under construction and actually finish it. We've been talking to a couple of local businesses about contributing to it, and we're pretty sure that we have negotiated at least $105,000 worth of contributions from local business. We're hoping that will be more. We've applied for federal and provincial grants. We are continuing to talk to private partners, and I think we realize that the region has some skin in the game, and they should be anteing up and helping to solve this problem. So that's where we are with this project. As we said, we need an additional $20,400 from the town just to finish the design, and then we will have a finished, approved design ready for construction which will probably be next summer, July and August. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Dennis, for that presentation. Just to fill in a couple of gaps on the working committee, the town representatives are Jason Marr, Director of Public Works, and Councilors Wayne Olson and myself sit on that committee. The region, I'll turn to the Director of Public Works. Mr. Marr, I don't know if you have an exact figure yet, but I know you have had talks with the region on their funding. Anything to, any information that you can give this council?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. You're right, there has been conversations with the region with respect to contributing to this project. They seem open to the idea of contributing funds towards this project, but nothing has been set with respect to amounts yet.
Okay, thank you for that. I will now open it up to questions from council on the presentation, and Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Edel. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I appreciate all the hard work your committee and your group has done. The question I have for you, you're focusing your solution on the dissipation of energy after the outlet, and on the slide entitled "What is Happening," you define the root cause of this issue being the stormwater outlet design and the excessive water volume energy at the outlet. Why haven't you added something to control that, like they do at the St. John's Pond or some of the other ponds? Was that ever considered in your group discussion?
Well, we've considered everything. I think what's happened is that the design of the stormwater management pond itself and the outlet, which was designed as part of Highway 20, were designed at a time before we had the amount of development we had above, and also probably not accounting for the amount of excessive weather events that we've had with climate change. So the only solution then, because that water is coming down in that velocity, is to dissipate that energy. There's no other way to solve it. You'd have to redesign the outlet. You'd have to redesign the stormwater management pond.
Councilor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that, but I don't understand why you can't do anything to...
It's on now.
Oh, sorry about that. What I don't understand is why it can't be a combination of something to reduce the flow before it goes out.
I think this is the problem that was presented to the design engineer within the working group, and this is their solution. I don't know of any other solution to that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Wink.
Yes, Dennis, thank you very much for your presentation. Very informative, and it's nice to see that things are moving along. We've entered into a bit of a hiccup, and that's why you're here today. You mentioned one flake discovered, which requires a second field trip. What was the flake? If you could explain that to everyone in the room. And has the second field trip been completed as yet?
Okay, so as far as I understand, the flake could be something from an arrowhead, or it could be a tool. It's just probably some flint that was found. No, it has not until we have funding. We can't authorize this second stage. They are optimistic, and they are on our side, because both First Nations like this project because it's going to fix a natural environment. So we're optimistic that basically we just have to go out there and just confirm there's nothing else there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions? Councilor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, Dennis, for the presentation. And I know that Trout Unlimited is, I think they're the masters of relationships with the landowners and the property owners, and I think you should be congratulated for all your work in the 12 Mile Creek. Now, I would suspect that what you're going to find is that corner was probably a little more important than we think it is as far as trails and that type of thing. And I see this as a bigger problem or a bigger issue and a bigger opportunity, I guess, because if we if we manage to tie up the trail behind it, the roadway trail with Thorold, which is something that should happen, I think. This is going to, and then we have a nature park. We're going to have quite a feature for the town right on the crucial corner for the community and for the creek.
Yeah, good point. When we rehabilitate the site after construction, we have allocated money for plantings, and we're hoping at that point to create a nature trail that would connect the site perhaps to the Steve Bauer Trail and do an interpretive trail. So we have a lot of support from both Pelham Cares and from the Lions Club for that.
And further, Mr. Mayor, I think I'm pretty optimistic about raising the funds for it, and I'm optimistic that there are grants there. I was reading the FCM grants, and there appear to be a number of things, and our treasurer would probably be able to expand on the grants, I think. I think the money's there, and I know local businesses are very interested in doing this because it's so important to the town. Because early maps of Niagara region clearly show Font Hill. They don't show Highway 20, but they show 12 Mile Creek right there, and starts approximately where we are right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eckert.
Just one question on the mitigation process where it looks like steps down to reduce the flow, the speed of the flow, et cetera. Is that going to cause, does this report look at the fact that those little pools that we see on the steps that will fill with sediment and every once in a while will have to be cleaned out?
Not my understanding. I think we're using round rocks in that area there so that they won't hold the sediment. And basically, it's going to go down to where it levels off is kind of a small floodplain, and that's where the extra water will go. And so it won't stay in that channel, and it won't channelize that. So we're actually going to build the channel up and then use the step pool. So it should be aesthetically quite nice to see that. You'll have a kind of a little stream running through there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So I will turn to the treasurer, if I may, and if it was the will of council to approve of this funding, perhaps the treasurer could tell us where what reserve the money would come from.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, right now we're always looking for grants. That's always my first place where I go, is to see if there's any grant funding that can help pay for this. This is the $137,000 that you're referring to?
No, this is the $20,000 to facilitate the indigenous.
Oh, I thought it was the shortfall.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
that's a little bit easier. So for the $20,000, we can look at one of the reserves to be able to offset that. We always have ups and downs in our capital projects. Right now, a lot of the RFPs are out and they have closed, so we have some positive variances and some negative variances. But I think for $20,000, we are able to absorb that this year with the way the budget is going.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I'll turn to the clerk then.
Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from Dennis Adele, President of the Niagara Chapter Trouts Unlimited Canada, regarding an update on Rice Road Stormwater Management Outlet project for information, and that Council allocate, I'm sorry, Mr. Adele, the amount was $20,000. That Council allocate $20,400 from reserve to assist with the additional studies required to move on with the capital project.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on this motion? I'm not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
I'll move to the vote then, starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you.
Again, thank you for the work that Trout Unlimited has done on this project, Dennis, and we look forward to it moving along to the next step. I will, yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item on our agenda is a delegation from Mr. Tim Nohara, and it's concerning the Cannabis Control Committee's memo that came to council in August of 2023, the subsequent decisions by the OLT, and looking for discussion around proposed next steps. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Tim, you have the floor, and welcome to council. We'll call it Tim and Friends. Okay.
Now you are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, councilors, residents who are here with us today. I'm Tim Nohara. I'm the chair of the former Cannabis Control Committee. I'm here today to ask council to implement the Redecan Community Liaison Committee agreed to by the last council, the town, Redecan, and the Ontario Land Tribunal, with enthusiastic support from staff and the Cannabis Control Committee. The last time I was here before you, see if I can find my mouse here. There we go. The last time I was here before you was on August 22nd, 2022, last summer, when I presented council with this closing memo, which you have today in the agenda package, and which describes the small steps this new council would have to take in order to carry our work across the finish line. On the first line, our first line of defense to protect residents from excessive cannabis odor are the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment, which were under appeal at that time by Redecan, CanTrust, who's now FINA, and Woodstock Biomed at the Ontario Land Tribunal. We had just negotiated a settlement with Redecan last summer where they agreed to implement what we call the Redecan Community Liaison Committee in exchange for some site-specific land rights, all in accordance with signed minutes of settlement. Yep, I just went the wrong place. Madam Clerk, Sarah, how do I get back? Nope. Thank you. I should use keys instead of mice. Thank you. On August 23rd, 2022, the tribunal issued its ruling in favor of Pelham, with CanTrust withdrawing its appeal, Woodstock being dismissed, and Redecan settling with Pelham in accordance with those minutes of settlement, with Redecan agreeing to take responsibility for odor complaints through the Redecan Community Liaison Committee in a collaborative partnership with the town and with residents living within 1 kilometer from its 182 Foss Road site in any direction, including Welland. Almost there. The tribunal had this to say about the minutes of settlement and the Redecan Community Liaison Committee that it establishes. After careful consideration of the earlier evidence presented and the more recent overview of the minutes of settlement and the revised zoning bylaw amendment, the tribunal finds that the proposed settlement between the town and Redecan conforms to the provincial policy statement, conforms to the town's official plan, and the official plan amendment conforms to the region's official plan, represents good planning, and is in the public interest. The Redecan Community Liaison Committee requires action to be taken by Redecan quickly by improving their odor controls as defined in an agreed contingency odor management plan based on complaints from residents being adversely impacted by odor. Redecan will bear the costs for its professional engineering work, complaint tracking and reporting, and other responsibilities defined in the minutes of settlement. The committee will initially meet quarterly. The town's third-party costs are for its odor engineer appointed to the committee, who will hold Redecan accountable by providing technical oversight and ensuring compliance with the minutes of settlement. These costs are expected to be small by design, and I've confirmed through discussion with our town's odor expert, Mr. Phil Gerard. Mr. Phil Gerard advised the Cannabis Control Committee Council, the town, and our external legal counsel and our external planner throughout the development and legal testing of our bylaws. And he's the principal designer of the Redecan Community Liaison Committee, which is described in great detail in the minutes of settlement. I'm here today to ask council to direct staff to implement the Redecan Community Liaison Committee. I'm here to answer any questions you may have. If council has a resolution they wish to put forward and discuss, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on that. If not, I've also drafted a resolution that's in the hands of the clerk, which I respectfully would ask you to consider if council doesn't have a resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Tim. I will open the questions to council on the, any questions on the presentation. Councilor Hildebrand.
Thank you, Tim, for your presentation through the mayor. As everyone knows, I was the second council member on the Cannabis Committee, and that was probably the most busy council committee that I served on. We were meeting very frequently, as probably all of you know. The question I have for you, we all know, and I'm sure the residents here know, that in the last term, the issue with cannabis and related meetings we had packed the MCC. We had both sides of this room and standing room only crowds. So obviously at that time, it was a big issue. I know you're here because it's still an issue from a resident standpoint, and I agree with you. We both live in the 1 kilometer radius, so we're part of the residents that live in the Redecan area and frequently smell the odor from the plant. What evidence do you have to substantiate this other than our personal experience and complaints that residents list to us?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Before coming back to council, again, we planned on coming back to this new council because we ran out of time last August. We were moving into a fall election. The former members of the committee did get back together at our old Massimo's meeting grounds, which were kind of shut down during COVID. And many of them originally came from the community and got involved on this issue because of those complaints. Several of them went back to the community, and specifically within 1 kilometer radius of Redecan, and literally went door to door. And what I can tell you from the evidence they presented to me is maybe 50% of the door-to-door responses express concern with odor still. Odor, of course, is periodic. It's based on meteorological conditions, seasons, the growing state of the plants, all of that influence when you get odor. But they are still troubled by it, and they want to see this work, carrying it over the finish line, complete. On a personal level, to answer your question, I do live just within the 1 kilometer boundary of the site. I'm actually upwind, which means I'm in the worst possible location for having a problem with odor. Having said that, we do get easterly winds periodically. I would say in the last 2 months, 3 months, 4 times a month, once a week, I personally experience the odor. I walk that area, so I actually walk and confirm. I understand the wind conditions and the meteorological aspects, so I know it's coming from that location. For the record, I personally don't mind the smell of cannabis. I'm just, so I'm here, my wife and daughter have a different physiological response. But I'm here really just completing the work on behalf of the residents of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. I like your opinion, Tim, because I think my wife and I share the same experience. I tolerated it far more than she does, and she is my biggest complainer that I have on that issue. Now, the other, obviously, elephant in the room, obviously, is the cost. You've quoted the CLC expert cost and the quarterly committee expert cost. I think you said you capped it at $25,000 or some kind of thing. And what is that based on?
Again, thank you for the question. So this community, Redecan Community Liaison Committee, is designed completely differently from the odorous industries nuisance bylaw. It uses a completely different approach, and it's a best practice in Ontario. It comes from the odorous industries and environmental protection in Ontario. That's why it's approved by the OLT and consistent with the provincial policy statement. It involves residents within a kilometer sitting on the committee, a complaint mechanism, phone, web, that Redecan, email that Redecan would set up, and anybody in that community would send their emails or complaints to initiate a complaint. There's no cost to us in that process. The residents have an open door. We're not building any new system. There's no cost involved in that process. The biggest cost, or the initial cost, I won't say the biggest cost, the initial cost simply relates to documents that Redecan is required to provide us from the tribunal, paragraph 92 of the OLT ruling. And the key document there is the contingency odor mitigation plan. If we were to prepare that document, that would cost us some money. That requires professional engineering. But we're not preparing that document. Redecan is bearing those costs. That involves running aeromod models, dispersion models. That's the engineering piece. And it involves explaining in advance to the satisfaction of our odor expert what they would do if there are substantiated complaint triggers, which are all defined. So that's their cost. We would have a cost in setting up the Community Liaison Committee. Our odor expert would need to review that contingency odor mitigation plan and communicate to town that it's agreeable to his professional satisfaction, and that might cost a few $1,000s just in terms of that review process to get the document. Beyond that, it's just quarterly meetings, and that's the initial arrangement. If there are no complaints, quarterly meetings could be reduced. This is an ongoing committee. It's meant to live because complaints will come and go based on a whole number of factors. I did speak with Mr. Gerard. Total costs for this year, if we were to do this, including if there was a substantiated trigger, and that's where some professional engineering work would be required, if there was a trigger, under $25,000 total cost for the program for the year. If there are no triggers, if everything is great, which is what we hope the liaison committee will deliver us, there's it's less than that. It's because there's effort involved in when there is a trigger, executing the contingency odor mitigation plan and following up and confirming that Redecan implements the controls they agreed to control in the minutes of settlement.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Ware. One more question?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. On April 11th of this year, Fiona CanTrust announced creditor protection winding down operations, immediately halting cultivation of new plants, destroying inventory, and yet released for sale inventory. So basically, they're winding the company down and expected to be listed for sale property, inventory, and equipment. That was the announcement that was made. And so basically, that operating plant was closed down. So what I'm going to get to is right now, we're still in the processes. We have complaints coming to bylaw and them going out with nasal ranger. Obviously, once the CLC is formed, the complaint system and the nasal ranger is eliminated and associated costs of staff. Would you agree with that?
Yes. So if Redecan is the remaining emitter in the town, just to answer your question to follow through, if they're the remaining emitter in the town and the Redecan Community Liaison Committee and its methodologies, which are well described in 5 pages of the minutes of settlement, those are what we've agreed to use for monitoring and mitigating odor, then yeah, you do not need bylaw enforcement to go around and measure around the Redecan facility. Anything else, those measures came out through the Odorous Industries nuisance bylaw, and those really are not relevant in light of the agreement for Redecan. For Redecan, they are not relevant. So since there are no other emitters in the town, then they're not relevant. We can save those costs for sure and save the time of bylaw going around with the odor meter.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Before I go to any further, Councillor, if I may just make a couple of statements. So, Tim, in case the residents don't know, you had chats, I believe, with all councillors, and then you and I chatted for an hour and a half Saturday morning. Brought us up to speed, again, along with your delegation. So if I can just ask a question. One thing that I have learned, being a farmer, I always knew there was a process, but when you operate by yourself, sometimes you can jump the process, and the cows really didn't mind. But I have, since becoming on council and being on, especially as mayor, I found that you always have to follow a process. So correct me if I'm wrong. The number one thing that I came out of our discussion that I hadn't known about, and I'm glad we had to talk, and the CAO acted on this. He acted on it before I talked to him, obviously, and I appreciate that staff have indeed sent a letter, and I'll ask the CAO to clarify this, so that the staff has already sent a letter to Redecan asking for their odor plan. Is that correct, Mr. CAO?
Yes.
A nice short answer, thank you. So Tim, the process would be, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no work for the council, for the committee as such, until we get the odor plan back from Redecan. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, my understanding, that's paragraph 92 of the OLT order, and there's the contingency odor management plan you're referring to. There's a couple of other documents that are related. We are required to receive those documents to our satisfaction, and it's at that point, Phil Gerard, I would recommend reviews to confirm they're to our satisfaction, but until we have those documents, we're not even in a position to inform the tribunal that we've got these. And it's when we do that, following that sequence, that's when we'd implement the Redecan Community Liaison Committee, correct?
Excellent. So that's all I wanted to clarify, was that until we get these documents from Redecan, that will be the thing those will be the documents that kick off the rest of the situation as such.
Correct. In the last paragraph in the interim order from the tribunal, paragraph 93, the tribunal tells us that if we have any difficulty getting those documents, to reach out to the tribunal and they will assist.
Excellent. Yes, yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. Now I'll go back to members of council. Councilor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Tim, and everybody who's here today with interest in this. I think going back to August, I think you have to look at where we started out with this a little bit, the perspective, because it was a path without a roadmap, and we were guided by the committee, and we were guided by our outstanding legal counsel and our in-house legal counsel. And I think we got to a pretty advantageous place because of all the work that was done and the mind work that's behind this, because it's a really smart way we've arrived at this, but it was step by step. And I think the process is very important, and I'm thinking, I believe I'm thinking the same way as the mayor when it comes to the process of how we bring this forward, because we're in an excellent spot. we got to take full advantage of what we have, and we have to study that and make sure that we arrive at a conclusion that's good for everybody in the community. And I think I really like the place we are in this whole process. So I just wanted to say that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nesnick.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, so I'm the newbie, and I appreciated meeting with you the other day and coming up to speed, and thank you so much to the whole committee, because that was truly drudge work that you folks all went through, and it was long and hard, and on behalf of the citizens who were not involved in it, thank you, because I think we do have a good judgment here. Proud of our staff in town who worked with you on that. I guess at this point, we just want to maybe find out from staff what has been happening in the meantime since the decision, and what are the next steps from staff's perspective. So I'm not sure if I go through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO to see what's coming next, or if we go back to the table and just ask for a report on that moving forward.
No.
Comments?
We'll ask CAO right now.
Can I just say yes? I think Mr. Nohara effectively outlines the process to how we got here and where we're at. I would, in broad strokes, agree with his characterization of the entire situation. The mechanism that staff have to engage in a dialogue with a bunch of detail with both council and the community is a report, right? We always reduce our words to writing, and it lets the world interact with it. So that is the appropriate motion for us to sort of give you our thoughts. Clearly, a documentation is owing to the town, to the community from Redecan, and that is a necessary precursor to the next step, which is obviously the committee. So we're happy to address those issues in a staff report, all or most of which would be public facing, so that we can interact with that. That's the next step in the dialogue and in our process as we continue to do our part of the work. Beyond that, I guess, as general commentary, there were a number of pieces of significant work produced by the Cannabis Control Committee during the last term. The way I characterize them is that there are key pieces in the zoning bylaw, so that the thing that happened to this community 6-7 years ago, where instant mega factories popped up adjacent to residential areas, can't happen again. And those are in the new zoning bylaw. They've survived attack. They have survived a complete upgrade to, a generational upgrade to the zoning bylaw. So they're in there now and will be, one assumes, forevermore. That's structural success. There are changes to the official plan. As the public may or may not know, we are currently in the process of a fairly dramatic overhaul of the official plan, partially because it's due, partially because there are changes at the regional level, and then more recently, partially because Ontario has waved its magic wand and fundamentally changed how planning law works in Ontario. So at any rate, as a result of those three significant factors, we are several months into that process. In fact, on June, the 14th, is the next large public session on that topic here in this room. And I think a number of people, I encourage everyone to come out to that and more. So that's a great night for public input. But we have the Cannabis Control Committee's considered recommendations after years of study on the topic, and those are they're sort of in there now, but they're going to be coming back the same way without amendment in the next iteration of the plan, and certainly invite everyone to come out and see that. That's another key component to the ongoing issue and to making sure that if anyone wants to engage in the cannabis industry in the future in Pelham, they do so in a much more controlled and considered manner. So those are two of the key pieces. And then the third is what Dr. Nohara referred to earlier in his presentation, is this committee and a mechanism to interact with. Now, at the time, there were multiple producers. Really, now we're talking about one. But how we go forward with that is fundamentally an administrative and legal process. And the way we talk about that is through a staff report. So at this point in time, the appropriate thing is to direct staff to write a report if you have specific, I'm sure we've heard everything Dr. Nohara has said. So that's obviously what we'd be talking about. If you have specific items you wish, as far as directing a report, feel free to include those in a motion. But if not, I imagine we're going to hit off everything in any event. So, and then you might just want to put a timeline on the report, and we will do our best to broadcast at what meeting the report will come back to. So I guess that's my advice. Look at that, it was longer than yes.
Counselor?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Eckert?
Just to chime in here, I want to acknowledge the comments made by councillors already, thanking Mr. Nohara, Tim, for you and your committee's excellent work over the past few years. Certainly, as one of the new members of council, I appreciated the update and the history of these things. And you've certainly made our job now a little easier than the previous council had, dealing with this subject right from the ground up. In regards to Councillor Olson's comment about, I like the place that we are, but I'm not content to sit where we are. So I don't want to be having these meetings a year from now or 2 years from now. So I don't know who to direct this question to, but do we have a reasonable timeline of when we can expect the report from Redecan?
I will turn to the CAO.
I do not. We do have external legal counsel on the file and increasingly likely to have internal legal counsel on the file. But also, candidly, if I did have the answer, I probably would want to discuss that in closed session with you. So, but I don't have the answer to your question at the moment. Oh, what I can say is we're working on it.
Counselor?
Okay, thank you. I guess my only ending comment would be then that at some point in time, we should be taking up the offer of the OTL to assist if we're not getting this in a timely manner so that we can, as a council, can move ahead. That's my comment.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any. I would just like to take a comment and address the residents that did take the time to come out this morning and listen to the presentation and obviously show this council that there is still problems in the community. I get your emails. So I personally understand where you're coming from. This council takes your concerns seriously. Like I say, we've come a long way, but like Brian, like Councilor Eckert said, and every other councilor here will attest, we still have a little way to go. So this council will, and this staff, we will do whatever is necessary to hold to solve the problem, let's put it that way. And I can only encourage you to continue using, if you stopped using the system for whatever reason, please use the PSR system whenever you have an odor problem. I know maybe you think it's a waste of time, but it all comes down to being part of the process and being on record that you had a problem then. So I really do like to see you continue or to pick up using that system again. Excellent. Thank you, Tim, again for a great presentation. And we will, as we more or less have said, the ball is in the other court right now, and we will wait for a reply. Tim?
Pardon me, can I ask a question in response, Mr. Mayor, through you? If there is any I agree with Mr. Cribb's characterization of where we are. He agreed with me, I agree with him, that's good. But it's a circular agreement. I anticipate it should be, we should know pretty quickly whether Redecan is delivering on that order. It's an order from the Ontario Land Tribunal, paragraph 92. It's been 8 or 9 months. We've reached out to them recently, I understand. That's excellent. But it seems to me that should be a quick comeback and escalation. I would just say that if for some reason there's a breach of our minutes of agreement, I don't know why that would be, but if there is, in other words, if there is some lack of follow-through, maybe directing Councillor to your comments about waiting, it seems to me one approach, if there is, I don't know why there would be, but if there was, then we have our zoning bylaw amendment approved, as you noted. We have our official plan amendment approved, as you noted. And if there is no CLC, because the other party doesn't commit to following through on the minutes of settlement, then there's simply no section 7 and 8 in the settlement zoning bylaw amendment, which gives them those site-specific approvals. And then at that stage, it's our bylaw, our odorous industries nuisance bylaw, which we know has been redirected to the courts. It's one of the recommendations in the closing memo you have before you. That would then become, in my opinion, the priority. But so if there's some variation in the circumstances and the agreements between the parties, that we should be able to determine that very quickly, and then the next steps. So I'd expect I would hope in the staff report, we would see that information. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Mr. CEO, any further comments or?
No.
No. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, Tim, thank you for your presentation, and thank you, residents, for coming out and taking part in this meeting. I'm sorry it's against protocol to take questions from the floor. Sorry. Send us an email. Okay. Thank you. Okay. To the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that Council received the delegation from Mr. Tim Nahara regarding the Cannabis Control Committee closing memo, August 23rd, 2022, the Ontario Land Tribunal decision and proposed next steps for information, and that staff be instructed to prepare a report on the status of the work done by the Cannabis Control Committee and the implications and costing of proceedings with the request as presented from this delegation for the July 26, 2023 Council meeting. Mr. Mayor, I know the mover does have some comments that he'd like to
Okay. We will hear from the mover.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add these comments as well to it. These are the items I'd like to see addressed in the staff report. Number 1, staff to obtain from Redecan a description of the current odor control and management systems being employed, a site plan drawing showing the location of existing buildings, building heights and emission source, including identification, and their proposed contingency odor management plan as required by paragraph 92 of the Ontario Land Tribunal decision. Number 2, staff to obtain an estimate from the town's odor expert, Mr. Phil Gillard, the cost for him to review the information provided in item 1 above and work with Redecan to revise them if necessary so that they are satisfactory to the town for the purpose of Redecan Community Liaison Committee, CLC, all in accordance with the minutes of settlement referred to in the Ontario Land Tribunal decision. Item 3, staff to obtain an estimate from the town odor expert, Mr. Phil Gerard, of the cost of him to be the town's odor expert appointee on the CLC for the remainder of 2023 and 2024. Number 4, staff to provide an estimated timeline for the implementation of the Redecan CLC, including when the Redecan odor complaints and tracking process will be up and running, and when the first quarterly meeting at residents selected for the CLC will be held, all in accordance with the minutes of settlement. And number 5, staff to report on the status of the final recommendation by the Cannabis Control Committee as detailed in their closing memo to Council on August the 22nd, 2022. And just one final comment, I think that the PSR system has been changed over to spot it and share it. The staff will correct me or you on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And I take it that you will give that list to the CAO, and staff will work towards that, no doubt.
That's right. It's open for open discussion, wholesome discussion by council, because maybe they want to add, subtract, or have their own idea of what the item should be on the staff report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So on this motion, any other questions or comments from staff? I see Councillor Kerr.
Yes, I'll try to be brief, I guess. My only concern, and maybe it comes into closed session as suggested by the CAO, at some point, you have to put a stake in the ground that you can measure to. And I guess I'm looking at the notorious intent of a lot of things is to delay for those in, I'm involved in some stuff legally that's now moving into its 4th year. It's amazing how long it can be delayed. I guess what I'm looking at is the Redecan response stake in the sand or stake in the ground. That way at least we have a point of action or reaction, and then instigating the land tribunal to assist us at that point. So that's my only comment relative to this, and that I don't know whether we can put that kind of in place.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? Not seen any. Mr. Clerk?
So proceeding with the vote with Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink. Yes. Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Mr. Clerk, before we continue, I'm going to call a biological break of 5 or 10 minutes, and at that time, anyone who has anything they want to come up and talk to, I'll be available to talk to. And then, so council, in let's say 10 minutes, will reconvene. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Yes.
Didn't say we're brought in
Well, I authorized them the first one, but we're not. This is, I mean, sort of a policy process, so.
bar. There we go. Thank you. Councilors, if we can get ready. Thank you.
Are you sorry?
Okay, Mr. Clerk, I believe we have all councilors present. We may continue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're now on item number 6 on your agenda. I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. C-10/2023, regular meeting of council, May 17th, 2023.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, after viewing the minutes, is there any omissions or additions that you feel they need? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Proceeding with the vote, Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
and Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion's carried. Thank you. Moving now to item number 7, and this is the request to lift any consent agenda items. I just will remind council at this point, you're entitled to speak to any of the items listed under number 8. You only have to lift the item if you wish to make a motion different than what's presented in the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, so the question is, does a councilor have any items that they wish to lift? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moving to number 8, we have the consent agenda. We can deal with those in blocks if you like. So maybe perhaps we could deal with 8.1 and 8.2 first and deal with that. If there's
Okay.
any questions or comments.
Thank you. Does any councilor have questions or comments on 8.1 or 8.2? And Councilor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to make a comment about 8.3.2, which is the reserve fund report. And in particular, I was looking at the item that refers to our balances at the end of the year. And I'm looking at, I think it's probably page 4, where that says reserve and reserve funds. They total now $13 million. But with the commitments and everything, we're going to be short of cash again at some particular point in time when I read this. And we're certainly going to be short of our targeted balances from the policy. And then I look at, and I'm going to ask Mr. Meyer, there's an item that's reserve and committed of $26 million. That appears on one of the documents. It strikes me that the commitments and the plans don't really match up with the resources that we have. I have a question for the treasurer. Will the asset management plan help to make the forecast of going forward? Is that going to make it a difference better for us to match up the expenditures with the reserves that we have? Because it seems to me like that gap is getting larger.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. So the reserve report highlights the total reserves that are showing as of December 31st, 2022, which is the 13 million. This is the non-obligatory reserves. The obligatory reserves are the DC and Parkland and gas tax reserves, so I'm not including those. So in the policy, the target balance that we have, we should have about $16.1 million, but we do have approximately $8 million of the $13 million in the financial statements that are already committed to projects that have been approved but not yet completed. So you are correct, Council Olson, that we are $8 million short in our reserves based on the policy, but I think Council and the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee are aware that we're working towards it. I mean, this is something that It's not an easy thing to reach the target. What has had a really significant impact on our reserves has been the cost of capital that's gone up in the last few years. So, a project that a couple years ago, we thought would be $1 million, now is coming in at 2. So that's been the biggest impact on why there's a larger gap in the reserves. So in the 2023 operating budget, we increased the transfer to the reserves, which is the transfer for capital projects, about $440,000. So that's about 2.5% of the tax levy increase. So the town is doing the right thing by always contributing towards the reserves. And that's all we can do right now. To close that gap, you would just have to allocate more every year in the operating budget. And with all the other inflationary issues we have, that's a little bit hard to do. But we're doing the right thing as far as always increasing the amount to the reserves.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. To the councillor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I'm thinking about the estimates, and because we don't have too many ways of responding to this. We can't raise taxes. I think I'm hearing from people that are telling me that it's becoming more and more difficult, and businesses are going, waiting till the fall to decide what they're going to do because their costs have gone up. So in some cases, their input costs have doubled, and the amount they charge to people has only gone up like 25%, and it's getting more and more difficult. Now, I don't have any dispute with the idea of putting away $400,000 a year or 2% a year. Perhaps it's time to think about making that into a formal allocation of 2% for future capital or something, because I see this ballooning, and it's going to be something that doesn't happen to us, or maybe near the end of our term, but I think it could get out of hand.
Thank you, councillor. Any comments to the treasurer?
I think the other thing is that, I think council, the mayor, we really need to push the province to look at the community benefit grant. That's the former federal gas tax. In the last 6 years, twice they doubled it. That's the level it should be at, not the $550,000 that we get every year. So there needs to be. I think they are aware that the municipalities are short on the grant funding for the deferred maintenance, but I don't know if it's something that all the municipalities work together and just talk to the government to say that that grant really needs to double and stay doubled, not 1 year we'll double it and then the rest of it we won't. That would really help the reserves if we had that grant that becomes part of our base and we can rely on it, and then we know that we have it to deal with the deferred maintenance. So that's the other option. And, we continue to look for grants. I mean, Public Works submitted a grant to the region for, what project was that? The Church Street, and, over $700,000. I mean, that is just tremendous for us to get that kind of money. So we are really focusing on the grants to alleviate the pressure on the reserves. But we also need, I think, more of the government to know that we really need that stabilized funding from the gas tax.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the output side, though, that's the input side. The output side, is there programs that we can delay or get a more precise estimate of what can be done there?
You?
That's for Mr. Maher, please.
Okay. Before you go, Director, perhaps the CAO would like to address.
I think from where I sit, and I don't come at it obviously from an engineering or a finance background, but I just try to look strategically. Our asset management plan, to the extent we have it, is excellent. We have some really robust data going into it. The previous council made a difficult but courageous decision to fully staff. So we have a dedicated staff person, and we've really seen transformational change into the asset management plan, but it's not done. The statutory deadline is next summer. It's Canada Day next year. But understand that our asset management plan doesn't have the building you're sitting in. And any plan that wants to talk about the future of Pelham's costs that ignores the MCC is of limited utility. You know what else isn't in there? The future of Tice Road, which is in the strategic plan, and we do have some directions from you to try to do something about that, but that's not in there either, because none of our facilities are. You know what else isn't in there? Possibly a complete renovation to Fire Station 1. So we have these huge projects that aren't even contemplated in there because the facilities are the last piece, and we're working on it, and they'll go in, and we'll have some rich and robust data. That sounds like it's doom and gloom. You know, I just want to remind council that asset management planning is an excellent tool to help us figure out what and when we do things in the future. But it's also premised on a lie. And the lie is that we're going to pay every penny of every dollar to get those things done, which comes back to Ms. Quinlan Murphy's point about grants and how we need some collectivist action to try to ensure grants keep coming. Because the assets we're talking about, I don't know all the history of Station 1, but I doubt we paid 100 cents on the dollar. I suspect that 40 years ago, there was a grant. And most of the streets have some provincial support in them, and most of the sewers had some provincial support in them as they were getting built over time. So we absolutely have to go forward with continued advocacy. We need the province and the federal government, if we can, to have ongoing support. But our current asset management plan, if you look at it, it says it's an $8 million shortfall. That's true. But it's 8 million plus. We don't have any of the buildings in there. But then it assumes that we're paying for everything. And that has never been true over the arc of your lives. I suspect it won't be true in the future. And it's not true in the present. We've done really well yet again this year with grants. So I caution us on deriving any permanent learnings just now, because we know the plan isn't done. This time next year, at least we'll be able to, or maybe this time in another month or two, but by Canada Day next year, we'll be able to say the plan is done. We can't even say that to you right now. So you don't have the whole picture, let alone do we know where the grants are. And I just think it's always important to keep that in mind, because it's not just an $8 million shortfall. It's actually a lot more than that. But also there are other income streams that are going to come into play, and we don't know what those are, because they're grants that don't exist yet that we haven't applied to. And I think you always have to keep those pieces in mind. And that informs a lot of our strategy going forward. That being said, it is hats off to a combination of engineering and finance staff who come together to really lead us through to help us make good decisions on this file. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. CAO. Anything to add to the councilor's questions, Director of Public Works?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding of the question is that there's $26 million of work on hand with carry forward work plus the 2023 capital budget. Yes, proud to say it's a large capital budget that this council has approved, and the past council, much larger than a lot of our neighboring municipalities of our size. So a lot of the carry forward work, and I think Teresa said there's about $12 million. Those were a lot of work projects that were in progress. So they are being completed this spring. Pelham Street is one of those. Town Hall addition is one of those projects. And then there's also projects that have been deferred, move forward into or subsequent years, such as Foss Road, sanitary sewer replacements, about $1.5 million that's in that carry forward. We'll be looking for more money for that project when we actually finish the design and bring that for council's endorsement and approval. But there's $1.5 million of that carry forward work that will be provided for that job. So without going through all the projects, yeah, there are a lot of carry forward projects. We're working to get those out. I'm happy with the progress our engineering staff are doing with respect to getting out tenders and RFPs for this year. our capital budget. We're meeting biweekly on that and making sure that we stay on top of those projects. So hope that answers your question.
Counselor?
Yes, thank you. I just wonder at $27 million that's a lot of project to manage for our small staff that we have. Another detailed question, Mr. Mayor, if I could. Human resources capacity building, we have the reserve for that. Now, how was that funded originally? Because is it being funded?
Through you, Mr. Mayor?
$600,000 or something?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. That reserve is funded from salary vacancies. If you recall, in the last few years, especially during COVID, we did have, well, in the last few years, we've had some turnover. So it is just directly comes from the salary and benefit line items. So if there's a savings there and there's no backfill, then that's where that money has gone to.
Well, thank you, Ms. Treasurer.
Yeah,
Counselor?
Thank you for that reminder, and I was also going to ask about the community improvement plan. There's a balance in there of approximately $300,000. Is that still an active program, or are we?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the balance that's there represents the outstanding amounts that we have on the programs that were approved. So the program right now is not active, but that's the outstanding amount that we still have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, we're also taking comments on 8.3. So any other counselor have comments on 8.1, 8.2, 8.3? Okay, not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, so perhaps we can just deal with 8.4 then in the block, those information correspondence, if there's any questions or additional information required.
Okay, any comments, questions on 8.4, information correspondence? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Okay, then, so maybe we could deal with 8.5 and 8.6 together, so that's information from the region
Yep,
and
from the region.
advisory committees.
Yes. Oh, and the advisory committee, excellent. Councilor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to talk about 8.6.1. In the minutes that were included in the agenda today, and first of all, I'd like to make note of the fact that the chair and the vice chair of this committee both come from Pelham, being Mr. Whipple and our friend Reese Evans. So we've got a position of some prominence, and I hope we can have them hold an event here because make sure that they succeed. There were a couple of things that I noted on here, and one is a work plan for the joint. It said that this was going to be included. Could we get that at some point shared with us, what their plan is? Because I think this committee at some point is going to be a very useful thing when it comes to redesigning the library and probably doing our building codes. If we have a committee that's active and able to advise on that, I think this is a really important thing. But this is a committee I'd really like to see succeed for a whole number of reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, so what department does that accessory fall under?
Yeah, it does fall under the clerk's department. I do have the communication from Councillor Olson, and we're reaching out to the coordinator of that committee for two things: the information that was missing from the minutes, as he noted, and also to offer our community as host for some of those meetings if needed. So those two pieces of information will be going out to the Joint Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Councilor Olson, is that fine?
That's it for me, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from any councilor? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
So I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items listed on the June 7th, 2023 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Okay, thank you. Any last comments? Not seeing any?
Commencing with the vote with Councillor Olson,
Yes?
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Thank you. Moving now to item 10, presentation and consideration of reports. We have three members of council that wish to report on their committees, commencing with Councillor Hildebrand, an update on Peninsula West Power, Inc.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be speaking about the termination of streetlight maintenance and Sentinel light rental program. Lincoln, West Lincoln, and Pelham had made a wise decision when they converted their streetlights to LEDs. Due to the increasing costs of streetlight past maintenance and the reduced cost with the LED lights, TransTest, our contractor since 2008, has decided it is no longer economical to keep crews in the area. TransTest will continue providing this service until December 31st, 2023. Penwest Power Services notified all the municipalities of this discontinuation of service. And the reason for this was that basically the light bulbs and the fixtures are no longer available. This is basically nothing new in terms of Sentinel light maintenance. Hydro One customers in our area, if you're on the farm, I dealt with the farmer a year ago and I've talked to him in the last couple of weeks. He's still upset because Hydro One told him, we can't get lights, we can't get fixtures, don't pay the rent, your light doesn't work. I know in Haldeman, all the residents that had Sentinel lights from Hydro One got a notice saying, we are no longer supporting Sentinel lights. So there. And I know that there is a local contractor that does all the maintenance for the public works departments of all three municipalities, and he can do the street light maintenance that's provided. However, that being said, I'm hoping that because all the LED lights are guaranteed for 10 years, we don't have any street light maintenance. On the other side, I'd just like to highlight both the Niagara Peninsula Energy and Penwest Power and Peninsula Service had their audit report done by KPMG to the IFRS standard. All this work was done at the end of May, beginning of June. Is that the right? I think that was the right dates. Did I get that right, Kevin? No, that was end of April, beginning of May. That's right. So, and the board, the financial board, and both organizations approved all their financial statements, which is one of the things that's essential for the operation of any business. Thank you so much for receiving this report.
Thank you, Councillor. Now to the clerk.
So I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that council receive the verbal update from Councillor Hildebrand regarding Peninsula West Power, Inc. for information.
Any questions on the report? Not seeing Mr. Clerk?
Commencing with the vote, Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you. Moving now to 10.1.2, we have Councillor Olson who wants to relay a message from the Probus Club of Pelham.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And on the 26th of May, I was invited to attend a meeting of Probus Club of Pelham, which was a new experience for me. They had 86 people in attendance in this room here for a presentation on the historical presentation on the heights of Davis Heights and the building. And I was recognized. I was a guest, but I was recognized, and they wanted me to convey their thanks and appreciation for the work that our staff does and appreciation for the use of this room. They said that they mentioned the names of the staff, the MCC, and they specifically wanted us to know how much they appreciated the work of Dory and Brian in responding to their needs. So that's why I'm making this report today, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Olson. I'm sure staff will appreciate the words. Thank you. To the clerk.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council received the verbal update from Councillor Olson regarding the Probus Club of Pelham for information.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to the councillor on that report? Not seeing any?
Starting with the vote, Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion's carried. We now move to 10.1.3. We have an update from Councillor Kerr on the Niagara Central Dorothy Rungling Airport Commission.
Thank you. Councilor Kerr, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I know this is kind of a hot topic for a few people, so I thought I'd bring people up to speed from my initiation into this in early March to as of the meeting of May 31st. As many are aware, the previous board, the commission was under review by the Ontario Ombudsman with regards to operation and activities that were deemed inappropriate, and the method by which meetings were being advertised to the public, closed session, et cetera, and were in contravention of the Municipal Act. The Ombudsman report has been released. It's publicly available. And the commission, though some had questioned, there was no response by the commission, but the commission completely accepted all of the recommendations by the Ombudsman and have taken actions on all of the 8 recommendations. So that's in place and existing. A summary of the responses can be found on the agenda and materials of the May 31st commission meeting, and it's posted on the website as recommended by the Ombudsman. Secondarily, a procedural bylaw was established to provide direction to the function and operation of the commission with respect to meetings. They finally put it in place. The former deputy clerk at the town of Port Colborne has been hired and acts as commission clerk to ensure the meetings follow the guidelines of the Municipal Act, and also acts as secretary taking minutes. All meetings are for both open and closed sessions are now recorded as per the recommendation and kept for future availability. Of note, people are asking, currently the commission is in negotiation with the primary tenant as per the original lease agreement that was established in 2013. With this being an ongoing situation and the potential for significant impact on airport finances, the development of a full business plan has been deferred until the fall. For those that are wondering about what is the commission doing relative to a business plan. The commission had hired a part-time airport facility operator to oversee the operations of the airport. This person's a retired commercial pilot and has substantial experience in aviation and related activities. So this is a real plus, as there was a void in the commission for a number of years, and they were relying upon others to give them some guidance. The new website is up to date and functional. It's www.centralairport.ca. I've been on it recently. It's up to date. Minutes are posted. Agendas of meetings are posted. Upcoming information is posted. They are fulfilling the recommendations, which I feel is a very positive step to go that route. A particular note, or just to bring council up to speed, a defibrillator was purchased in the town of Pelham Fire Department, which the commission says thank you very much, provided a training session for the use of this equipment, and that was greatly received. Secondarily, there's construction of a base layer for a commercial driveway to the proposed commercial hangars that they are about to put in. Much of this work has been done on site by the existing people working there, which has helped defray the costs. On a secondary note, on the May 4th meeting, the commission made a motion to approve the naming of 2 roadways within the airport after 2 people with connection to aviation in the airport. The roadway that runs between hangars 1 and 11 is to be called Bud Kerr Drive. The second roadway under construction to the new hangars is to be called Bruce McRitchie Way. This is in response to people who have contributed to the aviation within the peninsula, and as a note, I abstained from participation in this decision as it happened to be a family member. On May 31st, to also put into play, the commission received a delegation with respect to the advisory panel that had been struck in the past, and a letter was received indicating that they wished to dissolve the panel as it would have had to operate under the applicable sections of the Municipal Act. And it was felt that they had avenues for the group, many are members of COPA 149, to act and inform the commission via delegations, meeting with the airport facility operator, et cetera. So it changed from being a formal panel to be more of a ad hoc, personal, but they can still get information to the commission. And a final item for discussion, and it should be hopefully coming to the town shortly, was a request for all the municipalities, Pelham, Welland, Port Colborne, and Waynflete, to support a resolution from the Commission to the Region of Niagara to undertake resurfacing and improvement of the road conditions on Regional Road 529, which is River Road, from O'Reilly's Road, which is Road 629, to the entrance of the NCDRA, as that is a municipal or a regional road. So the idea was to try and get, unlikely for this year, being after budgets have been passed, but to try and at least get into next year's budget for resurfacing and repair. And that's my report, if there's any questions.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Councillor. Nice to get a report from the airport. Oh, I'm sorry. Mike, there we go. Thank you for that information, Councillor. Before turning over to Council, just like to comment. I know through your modesty, you didn't touch on it very much. It was great to see that roadway named after your dad, Bud Edgar Kerr, a decorated pilot from the Second World War, obviously, and it's great to see him honored with that, with the naming of that driveway. Any other questions from councillors on the report given by Mr. Kerr? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
So I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council received the verbal update from Councillor Kerr regarding the Niagara Central Dorothy Rugling Airport Commission for information.
One last chance. Not seeing any.
Starting to vote with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr. Yes. Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion's carried. So that moves us to 10.2 staff reports requiring action. The first one is the 24 budget schedule 2023-0123 corporate services.
Thank you. Any comments, questions on this item? Not seeing any.
So I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved the council receive the report 2023-0127 corporate services 2024 budget schedule for information, and the council directs staff to include the budget open house public meeting to be conducted at the public meeting scheduled on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023, and that the rules of procedure as contained in the Town of Pelham's procedural bylaw be suspended as they pertain to delegations to allow unlimited delegations to register to speak on the 2024 budget as part of the public meeting on September 13th, 2023, and that council approve the 2024 budget schedule attached hereto, and that council directs staff to include the approved 2024 budget schedule dates as part of council's 2024 regular meeting schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. One last question or last chance. Any questions on the schedule? Not seeing any.
Thank you. Starting with the vote, Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion's carried. Moving now, I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that council receive report 2023-0132, Pelham Audit and Finance Committee recommendation letter for information, and that council approve and endorse the recommendations made by the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee in the letter dated May 26, 2023, being whereas the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee received the 2022 Town of Pelham consolidated financial statements. Now, therefore, the committee hereby recommends the council approve the 2022 Town of Pelham consolidated financial statements. To you for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any comments or questions on this? I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's really a compliment. This was one of the new committees that was established by the last council based on a number of directions. And they've done an extremely great job. I want to compliment the director, the staff, the committee, and all the members of the Audit Committee, especially for keeping up to this. What makes me so proud is that only 3 municipalities have met the government-required deadline for the filing of their FIRs. And that's amazing that only 3 of 13 have done it for the region. I just want to compliment everyone and thank you for your hard work. Greatly appreciated, because finances was the #1 issue in the 2018 election for all of us being elected. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I remember on becoming mayor, I had discussions with the treasurer, and she said that everywhere she had worked, they had had an audit committee, and she couldn't understand why this town didn't have one. And like you say, council made it so. And it's been a great help, I believe, coordinating with staff and bringing forth some very useful recommendations. Again, thanks to the treasurer and the members of the audit committee for continued work on that subject. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So commencing with the vote, Councillor Niznik?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kerr?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
So that motion's carried. Moving us to 10.2.3, I have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved, the council receive report 2023-0137, Recreation, Pelham Minor Baseball Association batting cage licensing agreement for approval, and the council authorize and direct staff to negotiate a license agreement with the Pelham Minor Baseball Association. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this item? If I may, one question to the director. Is that it must be a standard form to come up with to have the association provide a $5 million liability proof of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is. We have looked at various area municipalities and what they're requesting, and yes, it is.
Okay, very good. Thank you. To you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. So starting the vote with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion's carried. Moving now to 10.2.4. I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik, seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved, the council will receive report 2023-0136, Recreation for Information, and that council officially adopt the Town of Pelham Recreation, Culture, and Parks Master Plan that will provide guidance through a 10-year period, 2023 to 2032, outlook for municipal recreation, culture, and parks facilities and services. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this, on the Recreation Master Plan? Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. This isn't necessarily a comment about the entirety of the report. It has to do with the naming of the old arena park. The question I have for the Director of Recreation, how do we proceed with getting that park named properly rather than the old arena park, or as the consultant called it, the Rolling Acres Park, which he admitted was wrong twice?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, staff would take that direction from council, and we would prepare a report for council approval.
Thank you for that. I'm prepared to provide that direction then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Not seeing any other hands. Mr. Clerk?
Proceeding with the vote, starting with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Now to 10.2.5. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Kerr. Be it resolved that council receive report 2023-013, Public Works Invasive Species Management Policy for Information, and that council repeal Spongy Moth Policy S802-03 and approve Public Works Invasive Species Management Policy and that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw for the establishment of an invasive species management reserve fund, and that this reserve fund be effective for the December 31st, 2023 year end. To you for discussion.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Clerk. To the director, obviously this is a policy to put forward a more general policy in place, sir?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. It would be a reserve that would be in place to deal with any invasive species that may come into the town.
Excellent. And if I may ask, this is, of course, the first week of June. We haven't heard any helicopters because we chose not to spray this year. Have we had any evidence of any, did we do the right guess? Did we go down the right path by not spraying? Any comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll defer this question to Ryan Cook. He's the one that manages that program for us.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we all indications so far is that the report from Lululemon Bioforest that population had started to collapse and that we would not see any serious defoliation in 2023 is currently holding true. I think indications will, if we did miss and that we were going to see a problem, that would be probably occurring in the next 2 or 3 weeks. As of right now is generally when we would be sending helicopters over. So, but yeah, no, all indications so far shows that we've done the right thing.
Excellent, good to hear. Any other questions? Councillor Eckert.
Just to further up on Mr. Cook's comments, I can tell you that on the 10th green, much to the dismay of my playing partners, I would go around that green killing the army of caterpillars that used to march across that green, and this year I have killed 2. So I can tell you that it's working.
And perhaps now you can concentrate on your golf game.
I parred that hole yesterday, so.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Wink?
Yeah, so if memory serves me right, back with the last council, we said that we were going to put away, allocate $150,000 per year towards the spray program. And if there was any leftovers, it would go into the reserves. So easy math is going to say we've got $125,000 going into the reserve already. If we allocate $150,000 again next year and we don't have to spray, now we're up to $250,000. So I'm not sure why we're being asked for $50,000 a year going forward, additionally to go into this reserve.
To the treasurer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what we would do if, right now, the way the review has been that we don't need to do the spraying, so we would actually decrease the allocation to the operating budget to $25,000 and put $50,000 to the reserve, and then the difference of that would be used to fund other things in the operating budget.
Councillor?
Good answer. Thank you. I like when we say decrease.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Kerr?
Yes, I think it's appropriate to move to an invasive species approach. Knocking on the doorstep of the Niagara Peninsula is the spotted lanternfly. Spongy moth we've reacted to and seen the devastation that it can do in a short period of time. I personally have done a lot of work relative to Limantria dispar, the spongy moth, and other things in my professional life. There are things that are coming. We can identify them. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency can help, but once they're here, we have to react. So I think it's prudent to have resources available and in reserve, because sometimes the magnitude of the response is far greater than people imagine. If we can react quickly and have the resources available for it, it's quite useful. And I appreciate hearing the comment of, putting a smaller amount into reserve, but it's nice to have reserve sitting there, because when it hits, we have to react really, really quickly if we're going to avoid maybe getting into what we ran into a few years back, where suddenly there was large-scale spraying and things that needed to be done, which had not been anticipated previously. So I think Mr. Cook's done a good job of coming up with this and pushing this forward.
Excellent. Thank you for those comments, Councillor. Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Councilor Eckert. Did you kill the caterpillars with your driver or your putter? Or your putting?
It was a combination of weapons of mass destruction.
Thank you. To the clerk.
Commencing with the vote then with Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion's carried. As noted at the top of the agenda, we moved 10.2.6 to closed session. We're now at 13. I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider a matter under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. 1, see proposed or pending disposition of land by the municipality and advice that is subject to client solicitor privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose. And then item 2, advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Not seeing any?
Commencing with the vote with Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion's carried, so we now move into closed session.